So, may I just ask, is it exactly 1 hour, 15 minutes? Is the WebEx the one that signs people off when the time uh,
Looks like people are coming in and joining the webinar, so we'll just wait a moment here. Welcome. So yes, good day to everybody. This is Dirk Meyer. I'm the moderator for today's webinar, and want to welcome all of you. I'm a professor of agricultural and biosystems engineering here at Iowa State University, and the director of the Consortium for Innovation in the Reduction of Food Loss and Waste. And we're just very pleased that not only for the excellent panelists that we have assembled here today, but also that we can contribute to marking the special day here on thinking about food loss and waste and what can be done to mitigate that as a special event here sponsored by United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. As many of you probably know, that in the United States, for the first time since 1969, well over 50 years ago, the White House under the current administration held a conference yesterday, White House conference on food, nutrition, and health. And so this is a topic that is near and dear to many of us, and we appreciate you taking the time today to join us for this webinar. We've also put together a blog on the topic, why it matters for food and nutrition security and sustainable food systems. And as The Economist here recently published the 11th Global Food Security Index, showing a continued deterioration in the global food environment for the third year, in particular because of vulnerability to shocks like supply chains, COVID, pandemic, war, as currently taking place in the Ukraine due to the invasion of Russia by Russia. And so the affordability of nutritious food and its safety and equality has decreased, while the inequity among countries has increased. And of course, this is a major concern. And so we look forward to today's webinar. We will have each panelist give a presentation kind of overviewing some of the key research that they've been undertaking as part of the consortium effort. And then we'll open it up for question and answers and discussion, which I will moderate. And I'll give, to start with, just a brief overview of our consortium. And so I will share slides here to get us started, just to make sure that you can see what I'm presenting. And so the Consortium for Innovation, Post-Harvest Loss, and Food Waste Reduction has as its objective some shared goals and values to achieve public benefit and change, and encourages public and private partnership to pursue innovative post-harvest loss and food waste research projects. And the innovative strategies that we try to encourage and pursue is to really work on approaches that will be scalable as we proceed, and that follows the model that Rockefeller Foundation's YieldWise initiative put out here a few years ago, and worked in Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria on different food value chains, and to also then implement practical measurement approaches in the value chains, and then to implement some of the analytics and capacity and modeling approaches on how to reduce post-harvest loss and food waste in a sustainable manner. And then a key aspect, and this is what has given many of us the greatest pleasure of being involved with this project, is to be training and mentoring the next generation of academic and entrepreneurial talent. And we've had a lot of students and young entrepreneurs work with us over the last several years in the different country collaborators. We've looked at establishing some graduate program education and shared curriculum, and fostered pursuits of entrepreneurial activities with various entities. And so, just as a reminder, the consortium is made up of a membership group of 9 institutions at this point in time that works with a number of others. And our base funding has come from the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research in the United States and the Rockefeller Foundation. And each of the institutions involved put money on the table in various ways for matching dollars. And then the projects that we've undertaken has come out of that collaboration and that kind of combination of funds. And so we want to keep that aspect in mind. And so here's the many other collaborating institutions, companies, organizations, NGOs across the continents, particularly in the Americas and Europe and the continent of Africa, where most of the work has taken place. And we have agreed on our recent annual meeting to continue the consortium in a collaborative manner and open to any and all that may want to explore joining with us in that effort as we pursue additional opportunities. We have done a number of things, and I just point out a couple of them, quite a number of manuscripts that are all emerging, evolving. Many of them have already been published, but the primary work really is coming to a crescendo here over the coming months and the coming year. Just examples are special editions of peer-reviewed journals, such as the special issue of Recent Innovation, Post-Harvest Preservation, Protective Agricultural Products that I've edited, and we have a second one of those in preparation that is open to people submitting manuscripts too. And we've also developed this online course on practical aspects in post-harvest waste management that's been developed and facilitated by our colleagues from Volcani Center. We've offered it virtually this past year and look to explore offering again sometime next year. The experts that have provided lectures from the US, Israel, Italy, Netherlands, South Africa, Kenya, and Honduras, it's just been tremendous material content that's been very beneficial to graduate students and people in industry. And then we have a number of resource materials. We'll post those, and they also posted at our website, and others, such as the post-harvest food loss and waste monitoring protocol that the Wageningen University and research has developed, the AgroChain greenhouse gas emissions calculator that Wageningen has published, the post-harvest loss information system database by our colleagues at Zolki in Brazil is an excellent resource. And then also the post-harvest loss dashboard that allows access to the YieldWise initiative that Jorge Chicas at Iowa State University has developed as part of his PhD program. So again, we talked about successfully scaling and affordability. It's around securing livelihoods and really improving the incomes of smallholder farmers so that they can capture more of the value-adding dollars. And our colleague, Dr. Jen Mbuko, is actually going to really talk and highlight some of those great things that she has done in that regard so that producers can capture more of the value chain value of product. Of course, the whole aspect of revaluing our ecosystem with regard to water consumption, agricultural land usage, and greenhouse gas emissions are relevant as we see day to day. And really in terms of advancing health, the focus not just on food security, but really on nutritious food that is going to meet the dietary needs and health benefits of individuals. And so nutritional value of products is important to hit in the market as well. And overall, our goal is to make a contribution to ending poverty and investing in education, healthcare, and I interpret healthcare as nutritious food contributing to that is a key aspect, as Drs. Banerjee and Doflo, who are Nobel Economics recipient, have pointed out in their book on poor economics that I would highly recommend. And it is really focused on the thing that growth is supposed to improve, and that's the well-being of the individual, in particular the poor that have lack access. So these are a little bit just an overview and a reminder of the consortium. Our web address is phlreduction.com, and you can access materials there, which we'll highlight again. So I'm going to stop sharing, and again, appreciate my colleagues joining us, and we're going to start the presentations by our panelist, and Dr. Jane Mbuko from University of Nairobi is going to make the first presentation. So Dr. Mbuko, please, the screen is yours. At this point, we can't hear you.
Okay, I was just trying to look for the unmute button.
There you go, you found it.
I'm sharing, can you see? Has it come? No.
Coming through now. There you go.
Is it okay?
Yes, all yours.
Okay. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, the audience that is joining us from all over the world. So I'm going to just, there's so much we have to say, the work we're doing to address this issue of food loss and waste, but I'll just touch on a few initiatives that we're doing at the University of Nairobi in terms of research and outreach to address the problem. I'm from the Department of Plant Science and Crop Protection. Right. So this is, I'll give a little bit of a background and then the call to action that has been made by FAO, and then highlight our research at the University of Nairobi. So I think I believe everybody in this webinar is we could say they're converted, so we know the issues. The losses are now estimated to be 31% with the food loss until the retail coming to 14%, and food waste come from retail until the consumption stage coming to 17%. And the recent report, the UNEP report 2019, actually highlighted that within that percentage of food waste, which is what happens between retail and consumption, there's a lot happening, a lot of wastage happening at the household. And so when we talk about call to action, before we even look at what others should do, there's action for us as individuals, as consumers. That 61%, we need to deal with it as individuals. So what does it matter? Why does food loss and waste reduction matter? As already Dak has highlighted, the food that is lost could actually feed people that are starving. Currently in Kenya, we know actually people are dying. People are resorting to very desperate measures just to, to keep alive. People are boiling herbs, some are poisonous, just because they can't put food on the table. And ironically, in the same country, food is going to waste. So actually, that saved food from, saving food from from losses actually could feed people that are starving. Again, when you talk about food loss and waste, it has an impact on the environment. We know that part of the greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change, 8%, 8 to 10% is attributed to food loss and waste. And so you can see that graph over there in the middle, 4.4%, 4.4 gigatons of the greenhouse gases. If it were a country, they say it will be the third most contributor after the US and China. So in terms of environment, it's a contributor. Again, of course, using limited resources, water, energy, and land to produce food that goes to waste is not sustainable. Ultimately, it boils down to money. Yes, globally, food loss is estimated to be worth, $750 billion. In a recent workshop, I had the figures, and now we talk about $1 trillion. That is money lost. For us in sub-Saharan Africa, it's actually lost income for the farmers and other actors along the value chain who are involved in production. So we've set targets because of the the fact that it is a problem affecting us, our food systems. We have set targets to reduce losses, and we know the targets at the global level, the SDG 12.3, to have losses by the year 2030. At the African Union level, the African continent level, we've given ourselves targets to have the losses by the year 2025, which is just 3 years away, right? So because for us to achieve those targets, looking at the impact losses have on the system, this call to action is actually collective responsibilities. There's government action, there's private sector, there's us, which is what I'm going to talk about most in this webinar. But again, you can see as consumers, like I said already, we see 17% of food is wasted, between retail and consumption. And out of that 17%, 61% is attributed to losses at the household level. So we can actually do something at individual level by reducing your own wastage in your own home and actually making it socially unacceptable. For people to waste food. So we got, even if we're not researchers or policymakers or private sector, whoever, as individual, you got a role to play. So the call to action is for all of us. So I'll narrow down to our research that we're doing to address the problem. Already Doug mentioned about the yield-wise strategy, which is has supported our work at the University of Nairobi, which is four-pronged. There's a issue of making technologies available through distribution, making market work, linkages, and linking farmers to markets, financing, access to technologies, and then organizing farmers in groups and building their capacity in food and post-harvest management. So that's what we've been doing. And so I will highlight what we've done with a group of mango farmers in Kenya. So picking the yield-wise strategy, there's the element of technologies, there's the organization of farmers, and then there's capacity building. So what have we done? We've done over the years, we've done a lot of research on cold storage technologies, and those three that I've highlighted: zero energy brick cooler, evaporative charcoal cooler, the cool board, and others in the pipeline. This is work we've been doing, adaptive research, and we've done a lot of research on processing, simple equipment for wet processing and dry processing, and also technologies for extension of shelf life. So this is from research. So we're getting this to the farmers, to the users, and we're using the model which is called the hub and spoke. So the university and research institutions serve as the hub. So we generate knowledge, technologies, but then we get out of our so-called ivory towers and work with the farmer groups, youth group, private companies, women groups. And now we're going to schools to actually scale up or rather disseminate this technologies. So one of the groups that we have worked with over the years is a group of smallholder mango farmers in a place called Embu in Kenya. So this group is called Karuruma Horticultural Farmers. And so with the technologies that we've developed or we've researched on over the years that I've already mentioned, these are basically for cold storage. Because cold storage, I mean, lack of cold storage is one of the drivers or causes of losses and waste in perishable commodities, fruits and vegetables. So we've been doing quite a lot of adaptive research on cold storage, and these are the technologies we have taken to the farmers in that group. And what have they done with these technologies? With cold storage, they are able to aggregate their small volumes. Remember, most of our farmers, horticultural farmers, are very small scale. So it does not make economic sense for them to invest in a cold room as individuals. But when they're together as a group, they can actually, own as a group, and they can aggregate the produce to achieve the quality, the quantity, and consistency that is required by traders or buyers. And then farmers, when they're organized in this group, that is the hypothesis. Sometimes it doesn't work, but the idea is when they're in groups with the aggregated produce, they can actually negotiate for better prices from the traders. We know I've told this story before, that mango farmers are generally farmers are really exploited by traders and middlemen. So, but when the organizing groups, they are able, the trader should pay a little bit more, but sometimes it's really hard. So, but this group, at least they've been able over time to negotiate for a little bit better price for their produce. In this case is mangoes. So they get a little bit better, but it's not yet what we would want them to get. Again, with cold storage, the reason why they sell even at a throwaway price is because this pressure. When you have perishable produce, if you don't sell, you lose anyway. So you might as well take the little that is offered. But with cold storage, the pressure to sell is not there. They can store the produce and look for market over time. And then there's the option. So in this group also, apart from just the fresh produce, we've also worked with them to transform the perishable produce into shelf-stable products. So what we have done in this group, again from research, we have various technologies for small-scale processing. We talked about drying and wet processing. So we have this, you can see this picture, you have a tunnel dryer, we have this little dryer which is called the dehydrate, and then you have a very simple wet processing unit, which you have introduced to this group. So what are they doing with this? They're able to make simple products, wet processed products, juice, jam. They have even ventured into making other interesting products. They're not yet certified, but these farmers are really, they're actually making wine. We have tried to discourage them because the wine is not easy. I mean, to access market, and if you don't do it right, you can actually poison people. But yes, they are keen to make more high value products, the wet processed products and the dried products. So from mango, there are all these products. We have trained them. They can make the mango roll, the mango chips, the mango flakes, the wine, the juices, jam. All these are products that can be made from mango. And these farmers actually try to do that. And the other thing you're trying to do is link them to market. So time won't allow me to go expand more on the market access, but that's the thing that they're working on now, to access local market for their products. Then we know, as we look at the issue of food loss and waste and contribution to the environment, we know that processing also generates a lot of waste. Studies have shown that mango processing actually, out of a ton of mango, 35 to 55% goes to waste. We're talking about the peel, we're talking about the kernel. So if you process and you don't know how to handle that, you're also, while you're addressing a problem, you're creating another one. So through research, what we've done also is to see how can we address the wastage that is coming from mango. So we're working currently, this is ongoing research, how can we do valorization of waste from processing? So using the peel, the peel as additive to chicken layer feed. Very interesting results from the students in animal nutrition, and using the kernel to as a additive to broiler broiler chicken diet formulation. So this has shown some very interesting results, and we still work in progress, but it's a way of using the waste from mango into something more productive. So as I finish, we are also doing capacity building as part of, like I said, we training processors. So we bring them, we have a food processing hub at the University of Nairobi, where we bring people interested, farmer groups, youth groups, they come, we train them on how you can add value to various commodities. So I'm a horticulturist, so my focus is more on fruits and vegetables, but there's training on other non-crop commodities like milk, like meat, so that, because all these are going to waste, but with the value addition, this can be preserved and not go to waste. We also train on, we have a unit which has technology for storage. So we also train them on how to handle produce, how to use simple technologies to preserve their produce. So that is part of our initiatives to reduce losses. Then again, one of the things that you saw in the call to action, the building business case, because sometimes food loss and waste reduction, we until we make a business case why wasting food is actually losing money. We need to actually have data to show, to actually show the impact or the economic impact. So recently we've been partnering with FAO, a study that is just finalized to look at, the food loss, quality management and food loss assessment in supply chains that link smallholder farmers to homegrown school meals program. We're looking at the extent of the losses, the critical loss points, the drivers of the losses, and interventions. So those of us who are in this space, we know data is a challenge. So we encourage partnerships to collect this data and share it with stakeholders. Finally, we also are greatly involved in raising awareness, because I just realized that until people get to know that there's a problem, raising awareness is part of the solution. People must know that even this session we have here, we are still raising awareness. But beyond this, we, University of Nairobi, and now with the consortium, we have been organizing the All Africa Post-Harvest Congress series. It's now in its 4th phase, where it is a platform where we not only raise awareness, but we showcase innovations and technologies that can be used to address the problem. So look out for the 4th session, Congress, which is due next year, September. You'll be hearing more details about that. So in conclusion, I want to say that while we're targeting to reduce losses, which is our SDG 12.3, if you look at this wheel that is here, which is a publication from the World Resources Institute, it touches on all the other SDGs. It touches on all the other SDGs directly or indirectly. So yes, we address the problem, but we're addressing bigger problems in the food system. So we need to do this. And the call to action is that all of us can be involved, should be involved, and do our part towards the bigger picture. So thank you so much. These are our partners in research and funding and research partners, and we are looking for more partnerships. If you're in this space, reach out to us. We here want to partner and have more impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jane, for your presentation, and we'll have a chance to ask questions here after we have the other 2 presentations done as well. In the meantime, take advantage also of the chat function here within the webinar. I posted the link to the blog, and so hopefully we can encourage questions and comments along the way so that we can have a lively discussion. And so I want to turn it over next to our colleague, Professor Joseph Akawo from the Ag and Biosystems Engineering Department at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana. So Dr. Akawo, your turn.
Thank you very much, Professor Maya, and for the opportunity to be part of this webinar. Let me also share my screen and get my presentation going. I'm sure it's coming through.
It's coming through, and just go into the presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, all yours. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much again for the opportunity, and let me welcome all participants to this webinar. And indeed, as has already been highlighted, of course, I mean, for us as KNUST being part of this consortium, we are working in 3 different crops in terms of trying to address losses and waste along these 3 crops, which basically has to do with tomatoes, cassava, and maize. So for today's presentation, as my colleague had already touched on the perishables, I will be looking in terms of the durables, particularly focusing on maize. So my presentation will be looking at interventions that we have been working on as a group here at KNUST that seeks to help reduce post-harvest losses in grains and legumes in Ghana. And as has already been indicated or been mentioned, my name is Engineer Joseph Okwakwa. I'm the Department of Agriculture and Biosystems Engineering here at KNUST, Kumasi, Ghana. Yeah, so my presentation outline will look in terms of what are some of the challenges as far as post-harvest loss in Sub-Saharan Africa is concerned, and also to look at in terms of our smallholder farmers, which are very key when it comes to production, where they have been encountering challenges in the area of drying, threshing, and storage, particularly in reference to grains. And then I will highlight and talk about some interventions that have been worked on to address some of these challenges at a smallholder level, specifically looking at small capacity drying systems that meet their drying needs, and also how we are promoting some locally manufactured equipment that helps to help in the area of grain handling and also in terms of storage. So these will be the outline of my presentation. Yes, as has already been mentioned, indeed, in Sub-Saharan Africa, when you talk about post-harvest losses, it is indeed estimated that about 15% of what is produced, particularly when it comes to cereals, really goes to waste, or we really lose them from the start to before it gets to the consumer. And indeed, when you look in terms of the quantification of these losses in terms of monetary terms, it's been estimated that out of about 27 billion in terms of what we produce, about 4 basically goes as what as loss. And this indeed has been determined to exceed the total value of food aid that indeed the sub-region is receiving over the past decade. So you can imagine in terms of how much we are really losing as a continent. And again, this roughly equals about 1/4 of the annual value of cereal imports that came into Sub-Saharan Africa as of 2019, which really says that, or which really indicate that indeed, if we are looking at this amount of loss, is enough to satisfy the annual calorific requirement for at least 48 million people, which is really huge. And I think my colleague did mention in terms of how we are making economic loss, and as such, if you look at in terms of if you are able to reduce post-harvest loss by just 1%, which equates to about 40 million in terms of gains within the sub-region. And so I should say loss reduction can be a more resource-efficient response to food shortage than the continuous desire to produce more, because it's been more or less emphasized that the more we produce, we really losing a lot of it. And so we should be vetting our minds and focusing in terms of developing technologies, interventions that can help reduce the losses along the value chain of these crops that we are producing in Sub-Saharan Africa. So as I did mention, my focus for this presentation looks at maize. And if you look in terms of maize and other cereals like wheat, they have been really contributing to the overall production in terms of global production of cereals from 2019 to 2020, and even projected to continue up to 2031. And in Ghana, maize is really using Ghana as a case for the sub-region. It's the most important cereal crop and a staple that is grown with current national annual production averaging more than 3 million metric tons at an average yield of 2.7 metric tons. And this indeed had been happening as a result of interventions that is supporting our smallholder farmers with some inputs such as fertilizers, improved seeds, and some interventions that helps them to produce more. I should say, indeed, in terms of our region and also across the sub-region, production is pretty dominated by smallholders who farm on less than a hectare of land. So you can imagine in terms of their contribution towards the amount that we produce annually is really huge. But then drying and storage and handling continue to be the major challenge that is facing our smallholder farmers, particularly in Ghana and in the sub-region at large. So these really calls for we to really look at how we can help our smallholder farmers, because if we are able to do that and address these losses that they are encountering at that level, then I believe we'll go a long way to reduce food waste and loss along these value chains of these crops. So just to highlight some of these challenges that our smallholder farmers go through, and like I said, in the context of my presentation, though Ghana, it pretty applies to other sub-regions. And for example, if you look in the case of Ghana, we have some installed commercial drying facilities to assist farmers in the area of drying. However, some of these facilities, in terms of their charges for drying of grains, have really been considered to be a bit exorbitant for the smallholder farmer. And in most cases, these dryers are also not in proximity to the farmers' areas, and therefore it discourages most of them, because they have to pay to transport their grains and pay for the drying services. It becomes something that really discourages them taking such interventions. And again, looking in terms of the population of the smallholder farmers, which is over 90%, some of these installed drying facilities have not really been able to meet their drying needs. And as such, we have most of our smallholder farmers continuing relying on the traditional methods, which obviously we know is really contributing to the losses that we are highlighting today. For example, during the minor season, where most of our farmers realize that they could still rely on the open sun to dry their grains, they tend to leave the grains on the field even beyond the period that is supposed to be harvested. And the consequence is that we have a lot of field infestations from insects, and transporting these grains already infested from the field, to the markets and to other places of storage. Already there's a lot of infestation taking place, which would result in high post-harvest losses. Again, when harvest is done in the major season, when harvesting coincides with rainfall, you will have most farmers leaving their grains covered in open spaces. And we know the consequence of this. Mold growth and aflatoxins become the order, and therefore these also result in high post-harvest losses. And indeed, in times where farmers have opened up their grains to dry in the open, you could imagine in terms of the space requirement to be able to dry these grains is huge. And therefore, this has also been a major problem, and of course, exposing these grains to the mercy of some livestock and other insects that prey on these grains, and eventually consuming or littering it with toxins and other unwanted stuff that makes the grains unwholesome for consumption. Again, if you look at the area of storage, that is also a critical area along the value chain that is of a big challenge to our smallholder farmers. Several storage strategies have been adopted. We have farmers harvesting their crops and keeping it in barns and baskets, holding them until they have the means to be able to thresh and get the grains off these crops. Again, farmers continues reliant on polypropylene bags, which have been determined not to be conducive to keep grains for long. And so, as you can see in these pictures, these grains eventually get highly infested with insects and eventually end up destroying, resulting in high losses. And also those who use these jute bags, which are not really the best in terms of storage materials to hold such grains. Of course, we have farmers sometimes leaving their grains at the point of where they sell them, using them as storage holding places, and some leaving it at the marketplaces. And in all, if you put some of these together, indeed, it continues to contribute to the losses that we encounter at the smallholder level. Threshing is another area that becomes of key importance. Indeed, some farmers would have to heap their maize on the farm due to inadequate or lack of threshing facilities within their communities. And of course, if you've harvested your grains and you leave it at the mercy of the weather, of course, in sub-Saharan Africa, where we also have a lot of scavenging livestock who roams through the farms of these smallholder farmers. If you harvest your grains and you leave it on the field for 2-3 days, you come back and almost everything is gone, because these scavenging cattle would use it as their dinner, and therefore that will really become some kind of heart attacks to these smallholder farmers. So for we, these are some of the major challenges that's really, if we are able to address, will go a long way to help alleviate some of the challenges our smallholder farmers are facing and contribute to reduce post-harvest losses, and by that make food available and also improve the livelihood of our smallholder farmers and make life better in terms of their living conditions. So as a unit here at KNUST and as part of the consortium, as I've already indicated, most of our smallholder farmers are not able to afford the high investment and the operational cost when it comes to some of these mechanical drying facilities that are available within their communities. And indeed, it has been demonstrated that for our smallholder farmers, if you are able to make small capacity drying systems available to them, that will really be something that will be very welcoming for them, because it will meet their drying needs and they wouldn't have to travel long distances and also rely on centralized drying facilities that are sometimes far away from their places of stay. And so as part of our research here at KNUST, in terms of contributing to the consortium activities to address food loss and waste, we have worked with several students and also private sector here in Ghana to develop technologies interventions that helps to promote grain handlers at a smallholder level. And so we're going to highlight some of these facilities and interventions that we have worked on and we've been promoting among our smallholder farmers. As I mentioned, one of the key areas that becomes of a challenge to our grain handlers in the sub-region has to do how you are able to monitor the moisture content of your grains, be it during drying or after harvesting. I mean, if you look at the lower picture here, you have traders or farmers who virtually will have to dip their hands through a bag of maize to really tell whether indeed it is dried or not. And of course, this becomes very subjective when you have to buy grains from such places and hold it even for 6 or even for a year. Because in such instances, you are not able to get to the bottom of the bag to really know whether the grains there are wet or not. And so in terms of working with some private organizations like Sexy Technologies, we have been able to locally produce a grain moisture meter called GrainMate, and this is locally available here in Ghana and within the sub-region. And so far, about 1,226 units have been distributed among smallholder farmers to aid and support in terms of how they are able to monitor the moisture content of their grains when it is in storage, and also and the beauty of this device, which later, I mean, participants or those who are joining us today can go to the website of Sexy Technologies, is that you are able to use it to actually monitor the moisture content of about 6 different grains, and also you are able to actually add more to it in terms of other crops that basically we should be able to consider monitoring their moisture content. And so this comes in handy to help in terms of addressing especially issues of aflatoxin, because if you should store wet maize in your bags, obviously we know the consequences of it, and therefore it is important we are able to determine the moisture levels of grains after harvesting, during drying, and also during storage, so as to be sure that we are storing grains that are dry and can be stored for longer periods. Of course, as I had mentioned, one other key challenge that our smallholder farmers face, which as a unit here in KNUST we are working on, is developing small capacity drying systems. And as I said, study has shown that in the sub-region, farmers are more inclined to having appreciation for developing systems that are able to meet their drying needs because of the capacities that they are producing. I mean, for our smallholder farmers farming less than a hectare of land, what it means is that they are producing small quantities or irrigating small quantities of grain. And for that reason, if you have large commercial facilities and you expect them to put their grains together, sometimes it becomes a challenge. And so for them, if they have such small capacity which can meet their production outputs, they more welcome it and are always willing to patronize it, even as small groups, to have access to such facilities and use it for their drying needs. And so far we've done some work looking at this solar biomass hybrid dryer, which incorporates energy from agro residues. Of course, like we have mentioned, climate change is of key, and so agro residues from our harvested maize, we have the cobs, we have the husks, and then we have also some other agro residues like cocoa pod husks and coconut husks, which virtually are littering our environment and even polluting them. And so therefore, the idea of this drying facility is to take advantage of these agro residues and utilize its energy potential to produce heat that can be used to dry these grains. Indeed, this is a mobile version. Of course, we know, as I indicate, sometimes farmers have challenge moving to communities where they have centralized installed drying facilities. So these can be attached to a tractor and can be hitched to it and then moved to the farmers' communities and used for drying. Of course, we have the other one, which of course can be constructed and mounted for a farmer who may need it. And these are coming in terms of capacities of about 1 ton to about 3 tons, which indeed meets the drying needs of our smallholder farmers. And as shown in the picture in the center here, these dryers are relying on the solar energy and also the biomass, and these are renewable energy, which makes it very economical and also supports the agenda of climate change. And indeed, we have what we call the Aflastop dryer, which runs on small diesel engines. These are foldable drying systems, which we can at least put behind your motorbike, so two people can easily mount them behind their motorbikes, and you can really move it to anywhere within the community to provide drying services for a group of farmers who want or who need drying services. And these are also central, which will be located within the farmers community. This is about 3 ton capacity flatbed dryer. And again, as I said, the energy is coming from the agro residues or biomass that you can find within the communities. And you are actually generating the energy or the heat from these biomass and then pushing it through this drying bin to help you dry your grains. Of course, we're working on other smaller systems to meet the drying needs of our farmers. This is a recently developed 0.5 ton capacity drying system. It can be used to dry different crops. You can see in the picture here being used to dry maize. The recirculating batch grain dryer. Also, we're working on with some private.
Joseph, we need to. You're kind of coming towards your end here.
Okay. So these are important drying systems, which obviously is important for we to promote among our smallholder farmers. And again, I had mentioned about storage, which is also a bigger challenge for our farmers. And so to be able to address the challenges our farmers are facing in the use of the polypropylene bags, we're promoting hermetic storage technologies. And you can see here, we've been introducing and promoting the zero fly hermetic bag, the PICS bags for our farmers to use for the storage of their grains. And again, working with this private institution, Sexy Technologies, so far they've been able to distribute about 13,000 pieces of these hermetic bags to our smallholder farmers. Of course, one other key challenge our farmers face has to do with having access to threshing services. You harvest your grains, and sometimes because of the delay and also because of the weather condition, those tractor mountable threshers are not able to reach certain places because of the conditions of the soil. We've more or less tried to look at how we can make it easy accessible for our farmers, and so we are promoting these all-season farm-to-farm threshing services where threshers are mounted on tricycles, which are easily accessible to every places within the communities and the farms that the farmers also have. So in conclusion, I should say that these are interventions have really highlighted provide an economically viable option for our smallholder grain farmers in Ghana and within the sub-region. And these options will continue to contribute to reducing grain food waste and loss, particularly at the smallholder level. Indeed, these interventions go a long way to look at the environmental and health benefit, because the use of the hermetic bags promotes chemical-free grains, and also the utilization of the agro residues to generate energy is also something that is helping control environmental pollution. And these provide our youth employment opportunities because they are able to depend or rely on these services to provide services to our farmers who need them. And of course, definitely will help improve the livelihood of our farmers because they will be able to store better grains, dry their grains in time that will be free from any infections. These are some of the output from our research work.
Joseph, we gotta stop. You're way long, so
I'm actually done. So thank you very much for the attention, and gratitude to the foundation and to the consortium. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry about that, but we'll have a chance to come back to some of those things hopefully during the question and answer session. So with that, I want to introduce our colleague from Zamorano University in Honduras, Dr. Jesus Orozco, who has been working with the consortium, and he is out of the Department of Entomology. And so, Dr. Orozco, Jesus, please go ahead.
Good morning, all, and thanks to my colleagues in Nairobi and Kumasi, and of course, Derek in Iowa for inviting me to this wonderful seminar. I just want to share with you what we've been doing in Zamorano related to food waste, and this from the perspective of an entomologist. I'm in the Department of Agricultural Science and Production. And just to give you a brief overview, Zamorano is a boarding school in Honduras. We get students from all over the world, particularly in Latin America, and we've been successful at getting funding from different institutions. At a given point, we get about 1,200 students, and for practical purposes, Zamorano works as a small village where we get our own food from the crops we plant and where the waste also needs to be managed. Most of the waste we get, of course, comes from the dining hall, where the students get their meals, but also from the production units where we get the excrements from the animals. And so far, the residues at Zamorano have been used properly in many cases for vermicomposting using worms, production of biogas with pig feces, and it's a commodity also in the case, for example, of chicken feces, where it can be sold as a fertilizer without much processing. So we've been looking at ways of increasing the value of our waste, and also at the same time giving a better management to the waste we produce. And being an entomologist, well, the answer had to come from an insect, right? And we decided to try with this wonderful fly called Hermetia illucens, or in the English world also known as a black soldier fly. And in Spanish, the common name is Mosca guarera, because it's attracted to fermented fruits that smell like spirits. And this is a wonderful insect in many ways, and easy to rear because the adults don't feed or anything. The adults don't eat, and also it's local to us. It's an American fly, an American in the sense of the American continent, tropical insect. So it didn't have to be imported or anything. We caught it on campus, and it's got a life cycle where the larvae feeds on anything that is decomposing. So we can feed it kitchen scraps, we can feed it feces, we can feed it anything that is left over from the crops, and at the end we get several products. So this is the normal waste we've been using for this experiment, for this experimental pilot plant we have. On the top you see what we get from the dining hall daily, and below there's some chicken feces, some pig feces, and on the right something experimental we've been doing for the last couple of years, which is coffee pulp, which is a huge contaminant and a big problem in the mountains part of Honduras where coffee is planted. So this is the fly. It's an insect, as I said, as an adult, it doesn't eat. And you can see adult and male and female are very similar, hard to tell apart. And they look like a wasp. They don't like people. They don't get close to people. So if anything happens to our colony and they get out, it won't cause any damage. So we rear this insect on these small tables on top of the waste we want to process. We collect the eggs, and those eggs are transferred then to the waste we want to process. And at the end, we get these larvae that you see on the top right and on the bottom right corner that we then can use to feed animals. And most of the experiments we've been doing with the help of professors in charge of different units are related to chicken, hens, tilapia, but we've also been doing some experiments with pigs. And the results are very promising and exciting. And the other product we get from using this insect to decompose waste is this frass, which is the insect feces, that can be used as a fertilizer, and I will be showing some results of this at the end. So the whole process consists of rearing the flies, providing a small enclosing unit for the flies to copulate and then collect the eggs, transport those eggs to the lab, and then given a small amount of eggs, we put them on the waste, and we keep on adding waste to these trays for a couple of weeks until we get some really nice and fat maggots that we can use to feed animals. And as I said, most of the experiments we've been doing so far are related to chicken hens and tilapia, but also some experiments with pigs. The wonderful thing about Hermetia, also compared with other animals that are used to decompose waste or to be used as feed for animals, is that they self-collect. The maggots, when they're mature, they get out of the trays by themselves, and that facilitates the process of extracting the animals from the substrate. As an added value, you can produce the meal, which is much more useful for the producer. And that's a time-consuming project, and we're still experimenting on the best way to do it that is also energy efficient and not as time-consuming as it is right now. And that process consists of collecting those maggots and freezing them in 4 kilograms bags, and then drying them in solar dryers that people use to dry coffee pulp in the mountains, and then grind them and produce this flour or this hermetia meal that then can be used for to feed the animals. And that's much more efficient, as I said, for the people producing. But as we see the project in the future, we would like to find a way to feed the animal directly the maggots, so that will be much more efficient for us and less energy consuming. So far, we're processing around 4 tons of waste a month in the unit, and this coming from the dining hall. We've done experiments with pig excrements and chicken excrements and also cow dung, and as I said before, also with coffee pulp. But the way we maintain the colony and the way we providing the maggots to the different units is feeding the Hermetia larvae with dining hall scraps. So we get the fertilizer, which is about 7.5 kilograms a day. We're producing and we can supply that to the people in charge of the crops. And we can produce around 8 kilograms of meal of this flour. And of course, we get eggs that as we see also in the future, providing eggs for people to start their own colonies and distributing those eggs through Latin America. Hermetia is a great dietary supplement for animals. It's around 36% protein, and that's exciting for people trying to save money on buying feed, where we can produce it locally just using scraps. And not only the protein content is important, also you get a lot of important fats, and our results compared very well in many cases on top of other published results related to the composition of the larvae. So our protein levels are constantly 36 to 37%, and our fat content is also very interesting. Related to that fat content, of course, the fat content of the larvae is going to depend on what we feed the maggots. And but there is, what I'm trying to share with this table is that this is exciting news for the people trying to save money on buying feed and just using something that costs us very little, and at the same time we're taking charge of the problem of food waste. So the experiments we've been doing with these chickens consist of having a control and adding 15% of Hermetia meal, 20% and 25% to their diets. And so far we have found no differences with these experimental units compared to the control, and we're saving money on feed. Also, the experiments done with hens, egg-laying hens, also have no effects. Nothing negative happened to the hens, but we're getting bigger eggs. So we're very excited about this. It's something is in the process of publishing, because there's some research already showing there's no negative effects, but this is the first time we're showing that the eggs are actually bigger, that you can get feeding your animals with an insect that was fed with food waste, and you spent little to no money producing. The same goes with our experiments with tilapia. And all these, again, this is done in Zamorano. Zamorano's got a unit where chicken is raised and eggs are produced and sold, and also tilapia. And our experiments with tilapia show the same pattern, no effects, negative effects so far shown, only saving money on buying feed. We did some experiments with pigs, and this was small experiment just because the amount of Hermetia meal necessary to feed the animals is large, and at the time when we did that, which was a year and a half ago, we didn't have the capacity to provide the meal necessary to do those experiments. But we fed the mama pig, and we did some experiments testing the milk and the piglets, and again, no negative effects. And just coming towards the end of my presentation, we've been doing this decomposition of coffee pulp. There's some research published that shows that Hermetia can be a very powerful thing, reducing coffee pulp in the mountains as a contaminant. And we've observed it. There's a lot of things that need to be adjusted in order for this to work, but we're excited about continuing this line of research in the future. Related to waste reduction, these are the data we've gotten so far related to reducing cow dung, dining hall, and pig manure, and a mix of pig manure and cow dung. And as you can see, really high numbers for cow dung, almost 90% of waste reduction, constant 90%, and dining hall is 82%. And these are all wonderful numbers we're excited to share with you today. Lastly, we've done some experiments related to using that frass, which is the insect excrement, what's at the end of the process of decomposing the waste, and using that as a fertilizer. And lettuce is a big crop in Zamorano, and again, as the same pattern with feeding animals with Hermetia, there's no negative effects. And as you may know, fertilizer is on the rise. The price of fertilizer is on the rise. So we're also excited about this, about giving this to the producers, and it's nitrogen rich. And that way, again, we can produce a cheaper lettuce and help with the reduction of poverty and increase the good food people eat. So this is a team effort. This is the people. It's part of my lab, or it's been part of my lab, and some of the colleagues in charge of the other units, professors in charge of pigs and tilapia and chicken and hens, and again, the students are fundamental for this. And I want to thank the consortium for providing funding for this research, and of course, Zamorano. Thank you very much.
Jesus, thank you so much for an excellent and timely presentation. I just was informed that apparently the chat function is not available to participants to type anything in it, and so that's kind of the reason why it's been rather quiet. Apparently, the Q&A panel is working. So if you have any questions, please post those. But okay, so we're hoping that both functions could be open to participants. So let me just ask a question while we get started here in kind of moderating. And I want to ask Jane, who started us out, Dr. Mbuka. Jane, you've worked with a lot of smallholder farmers, particularly as you have tried to help them convert products into food products. What would be one or two of the key aspects that you've seen working well when you, as a researcher, attempt to work with smallholder farmers and help them add value to their products? Jane, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. So what we've realized currently, we have a lot of the horticultural commodities which I work with are seasonal. So you find that because of that element of seasonality, for example, in mango, you find that actually, for example, in Kenya, mango when it is in season, it retails for as less as 3 shillings at the farm level. So it is really, and you find that, for example, mango is the commercial or the cash crop for in some regions in this country, is like what is the source of livelihood for these farmers. So the idea of adding value beyond cold storage is that they can actually, for example, this group that we're working with, what they've done is when the mangoes are in season, they actually make pulp. In pulp is just, the first is the puree. You just crush the mangoes. So they have a very simple equipment to do this, and they make the pulp and then they store it. Because you see, otherwise these mangoes would go to waste because you can't sell them fresh or anything. So we've trained them and they're able to do this. So they make the pulp, and then now around this time, there's no mango. So what they do in between the season is that they actually convert that pulp into ready to drink juice, which they sell around, they sell in their own premises there. And what we realize is that they could actually, just last week, we've trained them, we were looking for pulp ourselves because we needed to make some products. So you can actually sell this pulp to other processors, So it really helps, although pulp in itself is not high value, but it's better than the mangoes going to waste. So the high value is the more you add value, like transform the pulp, because that pulp can actually be used to make juice, it can be used to make jam, it can be used to make wine and other products. So transforming to pulp has helped them. The only challenge they have, our farmers that we work with, that when they make these products, access to market is the next challenge they have. So what you're trying to do with that particular group is to link them to schools so that they can supply this juice to school-going children. And so that's a ready market to the school feeding program. It hasn't yet picked up, but this is the approach you're trying to use to ensure that after you've made the pulp, you don't just store pulp, but you transform it into products that you can sell and get more money.
Thank you. And the chat function response is available now, and the Q&A is too. We haven't really gotten any Q&A, but I want to ask the same question of Jesus next. You also are aiming to work with smallholder farmers or help them with what your research is showing. What are some things or some key ways that you are trying to do that or see that working or be successful in Honduras or other places you may be working?
Yeah, so what we would like to do is to develop some kind of small composting box that we can give to people where they can put their kitchen scraps, and then they have the whole circular economy where they get the maggots that can fit to their chickens. And that's something we started working on this year. And that's where we see we can get involved with the community.
So kind of a starter kit, so to speak, that they can get started with. I hear you say, right?
Yeah, the thing we've been thinking about the most is one thing, Honduras is a mountainous country, and weather is important for Hermetia to survive. So in the colder areas, it's going to be a challenge. And the other thing is trying to keep the colony going. These boxes will be outside, the flies can be going in and out. So we have to find a way to keep providing the eggs to the communities. But these are details that can be worked out, but that's the direction where we want to see it going in the future to get interacting with the community.
Great. And Joseph, how about in Ghana? You've worked with a lot of smallholder farmers. What have been some of your observations in terms of how to engage and how to make that work successful and impactful?
Well, I think it has to do with how they are coming to terms with the fact that some of these technologies are really there to help them, and indeed opening up for way to work with these private organizations like Sexy Technologies now, transferring some of these technologies that we are actually producing or working on to these smallholder farmers, and therefore it's becoming one of the prominent areas where we are looking at in terms of they adopting some of these technologies like the hermetic bags, the grain mate, and some of these small drying systems, which now we are able to mount in their communities, and they actually using them to their benefit. So I think this is something that is really heartwarming to see our smallholder farmers adopt some of these technologies that we research on here at the institution.
Okay, thank you, thank you. And Jesus, I'm seeing a question in the chat here for you, and it's a question that does come up every so often, and that is, if you're rearing BSFL on substrates that are contaminated, heavy metals or arsenic and whatnot, which we're of course aware of in some soils, does that transfer through them and into the animal feed or into the compost, or what's your experience in that regard?
Yeah, there is research that shows that heavy metals are accumulated in the larva. So anything you have in the substrate, say mercury, arsenic, or lead, will be accumulated and that will be transferred to your animals. That's not so surprising, right? What will be surprising will be if Hermetia could reduce that in some way, which is very difficult for any biological entity to do.
Yes,
But
yes.
yeah, but what Hermetia does is to reduce the bacterial content of the substrate. So say, for example, with chicken feces, and this is something that worries producers. If you feed the maggots with excrements, they're worried about maybe some microbiological agent in the larva that is going to make the animal sick. And what research has shown so far is quite the opposite. It makes the animals stronger and better to defend themselves against diseases. But when it comes to arsenic, lead, mercury, it's accumulated like any animal would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, in particular with regard to the feed safety aspect, and the conversion of food waste and so forth. Along the same lines, I mean, what about mycotoxins, aflatoxins that might be there? Would that be about the same answer?
Yeah, we would pretty close related to mycotoxin and aflatoxins. We haven't done any research related to measuring the amount of them in the substrate and then measuring them in the larvae. But my guess will be it will be pretty close also. With E. coli, the amount of E. coli is reduced by Hermetia, and also Clostridium is reduced by Hermetia. So you can get a substrate that is high on E. coli and high on Clostridium, and at the end, the maggots you get will be very low on E. coli and Clostridium. And also because of the processing we do to the maggots, this freezing and drying, that amount even reduces even more. So innocuity of the flower is a big thing. It's something that the producers is always worried about. But what the research has shown is that is actually very little to worry about.
Thank you, thank you. There's also been a couple of questions, comments to Jane Yu with regard to mangoes and so forth. And I know you've posted an answer with regard to a recent documentary that has come out. Do you want to comment on that documentary, or whether there is a link that can be accessed to? What is that documentary all about?
Yes, in the chat, I've put a link. So, like I said, mango is a cash crop in Kenya, and a lot of farmers depend on it, although they're not making money from it because of losses. So this documentary actually is a production by Wageningen University and in partnership with the University of Nairobi and supported by the Rockefeller Foundation. So if you follow that documentary, is about 35 minutes. And what the producer has done is to interview all the various stakeholders in the mango value chain, from farmers, getting their perspective of what are the issues that are causing, affecting production. Because again, so I saw somebody had asked about productivity, because yes, there's a challenge of productivity. So there are the pre-harvest issues, including pests and diseases, but also, some of these pre-harvest issues, pests and diseases like the fruit fly, affect the post-harvest. So, so the documentary actually covers the production side challenges, and then it goes on to look at what kind of research is going on to address those challenges, how the various stakeholders like traders, coping with the losses, and then some processors who actually adding value to mango, not only for domestic but also export market. Yeah, so please, if you have a chance, please watch the documentary. You will get more in-depth issues about the challenges facing and the solutions in the mango value chain.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And there's a question also that's been raised that I want to just comment briefly on. That is this challenge to compete with, in this case, to Jesus, larger feed or fertilizer companies, with regard to the work that you're doing. But you could make the same argument in terms of the types of technology that Joseph has shared that he's working on with entrepreneurial company that are startup companies, or even Jane working with producers that are trying to own their own value-added product, right? And so this whole aspect of, where's the niche that we can fit into versus when do the large companies come into place and sort of bully their way into, and so forth. And maybe each of you could maybe comment on that a little bit in terms of your observations, because sometimes you have to work with them, sometimes you compete with them, sometimes you find the niche that you can thrive in. What's your observation? Let's start with Joseph on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is very true. And indeed, as I indicated, of course, with working with our smallholder farmers, for them to understand in terms of their needs, it is always difficult for you to compete with those bigger companies. And so you have to try and then come to their level and make them appreciate in terms of what you can do to support them. And that is how the startup companies come in, because the startup companies tries to work on things that really help these smallholder farmers in a way that would, make it something that they can be they can see themselves, or they can realize that these are things that are at their level, and therefore makes it easier for them to really, work with these startup company. And that is what we've been doing, trying to encourage working with our students in terms of some of these research outputs to take it up. And that is how grain mate and hermetic bags and those things that we are working on are being taken up at that level. So, of course, like we said, at a point you need to collaborate with these bigger companies, but then at the point you also need to allow some of these startups to get engaged with these smallholder farmers, and by so doing, you are able to get these technologies closer to the farmers as compared to these bigger companies who would be looking at more of bigger profits, or looking at in terms of their interest, things that the farmers cannot sometimes meet.
Okay, Jesus, what's your perspective on that?
The way we understand it, the way we see it, is that sometimes people feel they have no options. So the only thing they can do is to buy the feed that the big producer is selling to them. So we want to fight that, disclosing the industry secrets. There's big companies now producing Hermetia and actually selling black soldier fly even more expensive than the normal feed is sold, right? And they focus on the pet market because that's a market that is billions and billions of dollars. So, but we want to focus at the community level and show people how to produce the Hermetia and how to keep it and how to raise it in order for them to be able to feed more animals and to help with, how they put food on the table.
Yeah. And Jane, how about you?
Yeah, so like you saw, I did show some of the products that our farmers that we've trained our farmers to make. So you find, for example, juice, mango juice that is coming from the farmers. You know, that has to compete with international brands. They are up against Coca-Cola. You know, they are up against, in Kenya, we have all kinds of imported mango juices. Even we have cereals from South Africa. You know, this is what our farmers have to compete with. So we've always, what we have done, what you're trying to do is like, you know, you can't compete. Even when I go to the supermarket, there is that attraction to what looks like international brands. So the issue is to localize, you know, identify the local market. And that's why you heard me talking about the school feeding program. And this is something we're trying to see, like the kids in school would love juice. And so for us in our project, we even approached the county government of Embu and pitched to them and told them, you know, support your own farmers and feed your own children with the product from your own farm. So you create a market for your farmers while providing a nutritious product for your children. Of course, you know, that is still a gospel we're trying to push with the counties, but I think it is a good sell, and we are going to work with now we have just gotten new county governments, so we have started that discussion that they support, because the county government has to get into a contract with these farmers and pay them, so that and we see that as a more viable market than them trying to compete with the established big brands.
Yeah, and you know, we pretty much run out of time, but I think this is a great way to pause here at these thoughts, right? And really express my appreciation to all three of you for stimulating our thinking and the great work that all of you are doing, which is a reflection of really all the partners in the consortium and the engagement with students and the goal to work at the community level and to collaborate and partner with smallholder farmers and helping them gain a greater share of the value chain, which is really what you're saying. In this greater share of the value chain is we've got to get local governments and in-country governments to make more investments in purchasing the produce and the products and the technologies that are being developed in country, whether that is you know, facilitating the use of larvae for conversion of food waste at the local level that then goes into feeding poultry and you know, ending up at better quality and better and bigger eggs, or whether that's using the working with a small company like Sesi Technology to develop moisture meters that now allow farmers to determine the moisture content in hermetic bags, you know, before and after, or whether that is to adding value to mangoes and other products. And so thank you so much for stimulating our thinking on this particular day. There's no way to address all of it. Also, I want to say thank you to all of the participants for taking time out of today. And I know there's other events taking place across the time zones. This is recording will be posted on our webinar, and we'll follow up to all the participants that also registered to let them know that. Thank you to our great staff, Camille and Roger and Jorge and others that have helped us produce that. And with that, I say have a great day. And again, thank you for your time and your participation. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Bye.
and enjoy your day.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jesus and Joseph. Jane, thanks for getting us onto this idea. So, all right, we'll talk to you later.